Hello, welcome to Long Lost Friends. I'm Elizabeth Eve King.
And I'm Andrea Goyan.
Today, we are delighted to chat with KG Anderson, speculative fiction writer, and Bob Brown of B Cubed Press. Welcome.
Welcome, Bob and Karen.
Thank you.
Before we get started with our chat, I think you both might have pets to show us. So we're excited.
We always like to see people's pets. Oh, what a little, oh, puppy.
Pug?
Yes, this is Vicky. She's
Vicky.
my pug. She's my little puppy, and
Awesome.
she's designed to show up really poorly on camera.
Sure.
Uh, so just rest assured, there's a dog in that blob.
She's so cute. Oh, and look at this.
Oh my
Oh,
God, you're beautiful.
that is so beautiful. She's
We
got
just
Cleopatra
we
eyes.
just got them.
Oh, like
How old
six
are they?
months old or so?
Yep.
Wow.
And they took over the house instantly.
Of
We
As
have
course.
other
kittens do.
we have other cats, and two of our other cats are fine with them, and one of them is not so fine, but we're getting there.
So you now have five?
Yes.
Any
Wow.
dogs? Yeah.
No.
Bob, you have two dogs or three?
I have four dogs, and then I have a cat that lives in a box on the porch. The
Box cat.
well, actually, it's a I built it, and it's heated, got 2 inches of insulation and a front porch, but it's still a box.
Is it a is it a big area or is the box just come and go from the box?
It's a box that they come and go. She sits inside, and you know she or he is there when you reach in, and he'll reach out and shake hands and let you know. And if it wants fed, it puts its front paws on the front door and looks over the transom and uh, sends the mental message of "feed me." And it likes frisky shreds most of all. I don't know why, but it does, and its name is Roger.
Sure. Roger, who may be a girl or a boy.
Say that again.
Roger, who may be a girl or a boy.
No, he's a boy.
Okay.
What happened was I had a farm that I had rented the old. It was a 100-year-old farmhouse, or actually 115 years, 1895. Uh, Farmhouse out to a fella, and when I he moved out and abandoned his animals, and
Oh,
I went in there and I found Mama and her kittens, and she was feeding them squirrels that she was catching in the trees.
wow.
And Roger was the survivor, and now he's fat and lazy and lives in a box on my porch.
Good story.
Wow, yeah. So yours don't look like they've ever eaten squirrel, Karen.
No. Well, that there he goes. His brother looks just like him, and you can tell them apart from the front because Chase has a white nose and Freeze has a dark nose, but from behind you can't tell which cat you're dealing with.
So you hope they're both good.
Well, they're at the stage where they're exploring and knocking things over.
Yes, I have one at that stage. I have three at that stage, actually, really, but one basically because it's in here. So I had a number of questions for you. First of all, you guys both began writing speculative fiction, editing, publishing at a fairly late age. So I wanted to ask you about that. And Bob, I wanted to ask, how did you start B Cubed Press?
Oh, it was a half a bottle of rye whiskey to start with. The
It's
I
necessary.
that I finished that up the election night and of 2016, and then it was after that I saw that we had the Trump inauguration coming up, and so I wrote a little story I popped online um, just for the fun of it. And seems like somebody or some people liked it, and they said you ought to do an anthology. And I had never done an anthology. I just write. And then I called up Phyllis Irene Radford and said, I think I'll do an anthology, and we'll have it out on Trump's 100th day. And she told me I was crazy and said, okay, she'd do it. She'd been through projects before with me. We wrote a nice novel together, Lost Enforcer, but it's out of print right now. And so we did it, and then my daughter called me up at work the next day and said, "You know, you're number one." Uh, and I said, "Oh, okay." And because I'm going to go back to the point, I had no clue how to do an anthology, other than I picked a bunch of them off my shelf and was reading them madly. And Jennifer Brozak, a wonderful human being, found out what I was doing and said, "Here, let me give you some advice." And she did, and it was very helpful. And so we got started, and now we're 20 some odd books into it. I'm always amazed by those anthologists or publishers who can tell you exactly how many books they have out. I'm never sure. I just know it's more than one page. And
So I have two questions for you. Is the first story that you put online available online still?
I have no idea. It's somewhere on Facebook. And according to Facebook's new rules, they own everything you've ever posted and can edit it and use it and publish it without any notification or permissions from you or payments to you. So it's probably still there. I just haven't looked for it. It would have been posted sometime around January 15th, 2017. So I guess I should go look that up, and hell, I might buy it from myself. Uh,
I didn't know
Can
that.
I ask you quickly what the title of the company, or how the title of the company came to be, BQ Press?
Bob Brown Books.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
Oh,
you may
That makes
figure
sense.
out that I'm a pretty much a WYSIWYG person and not a lot of fanciness to what we do, but we do it, and we do it with the help of friends and great people like Karen here.
and well, first of all, what was the name of your first anthology?
Alternative Truths. We wrestled with it for a long time, but we have to thank Anne, whatever that blonde. Oh, I don't want.
Coulter?
I wanted to say Bimbette, but
Is it Ann Coulter?
Ann Coulter?
no, no, not her.
No.
The one that he brought
Oh,
in
oh,
on staff,
oh, Kellyanne.
Conway.
Kellyanne Conway. Yeah, Kellyanne Conway. Yeah, there we go.
There
And
it is. Karen, say
anyway,
something. The camera
when
will.
asked about,
Alternative truths. This
yeah,
is it.
that's it. When she was asked about the crowd size, how come they were so different than the actual crowd sizes? And she had pointed out that they used alternative facts to just to make those decisions, and that became almost a catchphrase for the administration. To justify the lies, deceptions, and outright deceits that they were foisting on the American people. And so we wrestled with that, and then we put Alternative Truths became our title. And then you notice that, hold it up again for a second, Karen.
This I
You'll notice it's got snowflakes all over it. We had a writer submitted to us that he then sent us back a note that said, "Oh my God, I've just looked at your webpage, and you guys are just a bunch of snowflakes. I'm withdrawing my story." And we looked at that, and we made all the standard jokes about enough snowflakes make a blizzard. But then we got a hold of Alexander James Adams, a folk musician, very talented gentleman, and he designed all of his album covers, and he put that together for us. And we stuck with the snowflake motif almost consistently. And Karen hasn't even seen yet where I'm sneaking the snowflake in on the new cover. Um, well, Karen is very art oriented, and she's a professional. Um, I'm just a kind of as you see, I'm a hick from the back country. Uh, the but anyway, that's how we got started with our publishing. That's our first book, and our logo. I'll just tell you is the sword and the snowflake, the warrior snowflake, and we got that by I think weren't you in our first book,
Yes,
Elizabeth?
I
Yeah.
was.
Yes. You may recall that we had Susan, as was Karen here, as we had Susan MacDonald wrote us a story about the return of King Arthur coming back to Britain in times of trouble. And it turns out she walks us through a beautiful dual path of Arthur rising from the crypt and a plane flying to London. And when the plane lands in London, so does King Arthur. And it turns out Trump is on the plane and he is returned at the time of England's greatest need. And the beauty of it is, everybody that was in the book, I went on and made him a small Facebook profile image. And Susan's was a sword and a snowflake. It caught fire, and some people, Karen among them, went out and took the patches we made for that and put them on black berets, blue jean jackets, sent them in Christmas cards. You may recall when I was able to, and so that's the sword and the snowflake, and how snowflakes are integrated into the B Cube press, because we are just a bunch of snowflakes, but we are. I also like to think of us as, you know, people that are standing up.
Definitely. Now, Karen, how did you get involved with B Cube and how did you start writing?
Well, I've been a journalist all my life. I've made a living as a journalist and a marketing writer since I was 21 years old.
Wow.
And in my 50s, I met a book dealer from San Francisco named Tom Whitmore, and he was focused completely on science fiction. I had been a book reviewer doing mystery fiction, and he got me really introduced to serious science fiction. And I ended up working with a community that does workshops. And I got in the middle of a dispute with someone in the community, and they yelled at me, "Well, if you were a real writer, you wouldn't think this way." And I became enraged. So I applied to the Viable Paradise Writing Workshop, which is a week-long writing workshop out on Martha's Vineyard that is organized by a group of writers from Tor, writers and publishers and editors. And went there and immediately, as soon as I left the workshop, began selling fiction because they showed
Wow.
me how to write fiction. And I had written my mother was quite elderly at the time, about 100, and I had written a story about the nursing home of the future, which has all this great design, but then falls apart because Trump, and actually it's the Kushner administration at that point, has pulled Social Security and Medicare, which people thought was a wild idea at the time. That would never happen. And I wrote a story about the architect who had won all the awards for designing the nursing home. She's now elderly and she's in this nightmare of a nursing home. And then when I saw that Bob was going to do this book, I thought, this is perfect for his book. And I sent it to him. And that's how I began working with Bob.
And you've had how many, because you have a whole series about, there's alternative facts, there's alternative theology, there's how many, like I think of it like the alternative series, I guess.
Well, she is in six of our alternatives. of the 18 books that she's appeared in. And didn't think I knew that, did you, Karen? Uh, and Karen is one of the most talented short story writers in science fiction today. She has vision. The experience she got in journalism has taught her how to tell a concise, use a concise narrative to tell a story. And her notions of what is interesting and what people want to know bleed over into her work. And it's just an honor to work with her.
Thank you, Bob. I write a lot about the elderly and I write a lot about death. And those have actually been great subtopics for the B Cubed Press future series. But I want to push, Bob really encourages humor in his anthologies. And I wrote him a piece for the second book, More Alternative Truths, which is the best thing I've ever written. And it is about the totally my thesis at the beginning of all this was the Democrats had no idea what they were doing, and Trump had completely blindsided them. And in the story, the Democrats hold a seance to bring back Molly Ivins, Walter Cronkite, and Adlai Stevenson III to do something about Trump. But in the afterlife, they decide they can't do it. And I actually researched what each of them had actually done around Trump while they were alive, which is real interesting. Walter Cronkite sued him. But in the afterlife, they don't do it. They get Lyndon Johnson. And in the second half of the story, Johnson goes back with his beagles and he haunts the White House.
Yeah, beagles would, he doesn't like animals much,
Oh, and the
though.
beagles are crapping all over the carpets in the White House, and Trump is going crazy. It is so much fun.
and it
Now,
It
was good.
Karen, do you also do you do are you strictly a writer in the series, or are you also a editor or a publisher?
Well, Bob has a really good editorial team. Becky Kyle has edited for him, and Phil Radford, and just some really, really strong people. And just very recently, I have started to do some editing for him. This is the first book that I've done with Bob. And I think he let me do it because I grew up in Virginia and Bob grew up in Texas. And I'm really interested in how the Southern view of being an American has sort of inadvertently fueled the Trump and what goes on with the Republic, MAGA. So we asked a lot of writers to sort of look at what it is about the South, past and future. And we got some real interesting alternative history. Someone wrote a thing where Ross Perot's career had succeeded. And I just love watching people's minds work like that.
Yeah, it's great, and you do have include a lot of humor always in your. I mean, I know because I've been lucky enough to be in a few, and I think they're mostly humorous, actually, in a B cubed press twisted way.
We got some submissions for Southern Truths that were so off the wall funny that once you're getting into humor, you have to be very, very careful because to be good, humor gets pretty edgy and it can offend people. I actually used a sensitivity reader for one of the stories.
Really?
She loved it. But
We had
but
fun. Oh, go ahead, Karen.
no, but the humor stuff is really in the eye of the beholder.
Mm.
So it's tough.
Well,
Yeah, yeah,
humor has always been something I've loved. Back, and we mentioned earlier that I used to do commentary for Northwest Public Radio, and every award I ever won doing that was focused around a piece that I wrote for humor in the commentary, and it's people can't handle how dark the world is going to be or is being. And if we don't give them some reason to have a little hope, a little bit of distraction, a little bit of humor, then it'll all collapse in on itself. I mean, just my thoughts on humor. It's important.
yes, I think so.
Definitely.
So this was the first one you helped edit, right? So that's what you said?
Southern Truths, yes.
And it just came out quite recently.
Yes. It came out this
So
summer. And, it was funny right before Southern Truths. Actually, Southern Truths came out in October. This was the one that came out in the summer, Madam President. And it came out when Biden was still the candidate. And 2 weeks later, it looked like we had predicted Harris. It was really scary.
I was at a blues festival in August, and there was a young blues band. And God help me, I can't remember their names right now. Two women were the leads, and they had a song, Madam President. They were so excited at that point to sing, but they'd written it before as well.
Wow. Yeah. Well, people really. I went to Florida to sit with my mother to watch the 2016 returns. And my mother thought she was going to see Hillary, the first woman president. And it really broke her, not just to see that Hillary lost, but to see what kind of campaign it had been.
yeah, I can believe that. I remember one of my sisters saying, "I'm glad mom isn't alive to see this. It would be more painful, like to have her having to see that." So yeah, I
My
certainly
my
get.
mother talked about going to the polls in Boston with her mother for the first presidential election after women got the vote. My mother
Wow.
was that old. Her lifespan, begins with women getting the vote. And I worry that my mother died when she was 104, and I'm glad
Wow.
she has not seen some of what's going on right now.
Yeah, that's too bad. It would have been such a nice kind of a she's to
Would have.
have it be the
But
first
It
one.
would have been a perfect arc, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
For sure.
but
perfect
on the
art.
dark side, Karen, with your potential lifespan due to your genes, you could live to see women giving it back.
Um, well, yeah. I actually, when I started dating Tom, I told him I thought that in my lifetime I would see women lose all the gains they had made.
Well, I
I
wish you'd stop
Oh,
being
that's
such
interesting.
a good, accurate predictor.
Oh, I'm not always a good predictor. I called the last election wrong,
Yeah, it
as,
was.
as did an awful lot of people. But I'm calling the next one for Musk.
Nah,
I.
Mm,
Oh, you might.
That's
I don't.
Only
only
it
if the
won't be a
Constitution
presidential
fails.
election. It'll be the czar.
I figure Musk is probably at this point trying to figure out how to become Speaker of the House. Um, because
That's a
remember
very busy job. If he does that, he won't have any time to make incredibly ugly cars.
that he's not really making the ugly cars. He has people for that. I mean, almost everything that he's accomplished, it's been his money has bought the talent to do the work. Um, and I don't diminish. I mean, anybody who thinks that Elon Musk is not a smart man, is not a genius, is fooling themselves because he is. He's using his genius, though, for evil, and he's using his money for evil. And a man who's fighting the government to get an extra $57 billion in his bank account, and at the same time is standing up and saying, we've got to cut spending. All of these, or as Tommy Tuberville says, we got to put these welfare moms back to work so they don't need food stamps. Um,
Do you know what's really scary? If portfolios on the average, if you look at the NASDAQ, this year there was a 30% increase. Rich people made 30% on their stock market investments. That is
yeah,
obscene.
Well,
yeah,
yeah.
it's
Well,
it gets
Musk telling people to tighten their belts is, that there are going to be some hardship ahead. It'll be great in 2 years, but for the first 2 years, you're going to have to tighten your belts, it's just unbelievable. It should be fiction.
I like the meme I saw on Facebook that said, whenever you hear them say we could do that, but it would be hard on the economy, you know. And their suggestion was that to help you understand it, you say, uh, replace economy with rich people's yacht money. It would be hard on rich people's yacht money if we did this. We could end childhood hunger, but we'd need to use the rich people's yacht money. Um, you
It's
can't
pretty
face
scary.
the fact that when uh, such a huge percentage of the wealth of this nation is wrapped up in just so few people, and they fool the American people into thinking they're just like them and they're out to help Bubba get a new pickup truck or something like that, and I don't know. I could go on. I have rants that I've never
So,
even used yet.
There is a story in Southern Truths. It's actually an essay by one of Bob's greatest writers, Jim Wright. And Jim is an essayist. He comes out of over 20 years in the Navy as a warrant officer.
Navy
Real,
SEAL.
real character. And he got into writing about politics, and he is no holds barred, and he's so grounded. The piece that he wrote in Southern Truths is a piece he wrote during an election cycle where he bicycles. He lives in the Florida Panhandle because his mother-in-law, who he helps care for, lives there, and he lives in this very, very remote redneck area. And he talked about how all the Trump signs were either at the homes of the fantastically wealthy or the dirt poor. And he said that it was so ironic that they were united in their anger and their hatred of each other. They feared each other. And that was what had caused them, for whatever reason, to endorse people like Trump and DeSantis.
so do all of your anthologies, are they all political in nature?
No, but I am open to political stories, and there's always one or two that you could easily see as political. But I'm a political animal. Um, I had my epiphany when I was in the Navy and got to see the world, a lot of different places, and I came back and realized what BS I had been fed all my life. And I think my biggest epiphany I ever had when I chewed out a guy who told us that the was explaining the Texas Revolution to me in what I would call honest terms. And having been educated in Texas, I told him how full of it he was. And then I started reading and realized that if during the Texas Revolution, if the U.S. Army hadn't been camped across the border and the Texas Revolution was manned almost hugely by the governor's staff, the Alamo was actually Travis, the guy that commanded the Alamo, had been a former staff member of the South Carolina governor. South Carolina, as you remember, tried to secede in 1836, failed, and that's the same year as the Texas Revolution, and then succeeded later on in 1861. It was all about bringing in slave states into the Union to preserve that peculiar institution, as the Southerners like to call it. And so when I started having my eyes open, suddenly I was no longer afraid of having gay people teaching my kids in school. I was no longer, I just, it's an amazing thing to find other cultures and read truths that, that counter some of the stuff you've been being taught. And you go into right now down in Florida where they're going to basically ban the teaching of any kind of history. What a rough world it's going to be for those children if and when they discover how much has been denied them in their education. But again, I have rants I've never used.
Bob, I want to jump in and say that almost all science fiction is political, even if it's fantasy and you're in a fairy world, because
Sure.
who wins and who loses in fantasy, you get a lot about power, and power is sort of a stand-in for economics. Because people have to have, there has to be support, there has to be infrastructure. Somebody is building those churches, those government buildings. Do we invest in education? Do we mine asteroids? Do we invest in sending people far away? Do we discriminate against certain people and they end up living in a dystopian ghetto? It's kind of all economics driven by politics.
Good
Um, there,
point.
there's a fellow named Max Gladstone,
Mhm.
and he writes a series that I don't know how I would characterize it. I'd say it's complex fantasy, but it's all driven by politics and economics. And you're seeing more and more and more of that even in fantasy now.
So,
Yeah, I oh,
oh,
go
no, I was
on.
going to say, yeah, no, you're absolutely, I think you make an excellent point. So what is the newest anthology you guys have out? I know you've got the Southern Truths, but you have another
But I
one,
hear
correct?
there's
We're
one
working on
right
one.
after that. Oh,
We're working on it right now. It's going to be, it is we're publishing on January 20th. We are called, yes, Karen, we are. Uh, it's a challenge, and I don't mind a challenge, nor does Karen, nor do the people on our team. But what it was originally called was Retribution and Revenge, because as we sit here and face the future, we look at a president who has promised us not prosperity, not more freedoms, not a better world for us and our children, not better education, not job security, but he's promised us retribution. I am your retribution and revenge. It's been called his revenge tour. And it is frightening beyond words to knowing what he's planning on doing. The fact that he is planning on destroying to the maximum extent possible the institutions that make America what it is, and in the chaos that will rise from that destruction of the institution, plan on building a new nation in his own image. And I will be surprised if we get out of this without him forcing the destruction into such chaos that we do agree to call a new constitutional convention, and that will be the cementing of turning our country into forever a fascist state. So, um, that's what this new book is about. It's about the that world. And I tell you, as much as I love humor, we have humor, but it has been hard to find the humor in this. It has been hard to find the lighter half of this because I used to sit down and think about the Warren Court that gave us the Miranda decisions, firmed up the right to search and seizure, kept them to watch over my lifetime, to watch those decisions be overturned, peeled away, to watch the rights of women, because I have 8 sisters, a mother, 2 grandmothers, several daughters. Uh, I take seriously what is being done to them in the name of money for billionaires or keeping their yacht money safe, if you want to, and power. Okay.
and do you have a title for this book?
Well, that's where we started off with alternatives retribution and revenge. Now it's alternative liberties, and you may feel free if you want to flash at this point. You might want to flash that um, screen I sent you of the cover, and now we're tentatively playing with the notion of alternative liberties, retribution, and revenge. But as one of my fellows that used to work for me back when I was in engineering says, indecision is the key to flexibility. And I like to keep our titles flexible until that moment when I'm submitting it and having the cover done. And So,
I can screen share. I have it right here.
and we're very happy with this artist that has done this for us, Jay Rhodes. Uh, he is a brilliant artist. He did uh, 12 covers for Brenda Clough recently, and he's done covers. He's done covers for probably every great writer out there.
One of the things I love about your anthologies is the diversity, though. I mean, in some ways, everybody has probably a bit of the same idea. There's still such a diversity of ideas in the stories and of angles that they come from, the sort of toward the same point, but it's really
It,
cool to see that.
the current call that we have for alternative liberties has gotten more submissions than any that there have ever been. And we have a group of editors. No?
No,
Really?
Alternative Apocalypse was an alternative war. Both exceeded this.
Wow.
Yeah, what we've done though is we use Moksha now, and Moksha requires people to take an action other than just attaching it to an email. And so what it does is it does tend to get a more focused group of people who understand the professional end of writing. So we're getting a better quality of submissions, but we only got 270, I think, on this.
Well, you're still getting, there are still people right now lobbying for their friends who missed the deadline, I'm seeing. But
I've already I've been taking care of them.
it's
They're
it's a madhouse though. People really are into it. And it's been real interesting because we've gotten so many good stories that what we're starting to do, normally we look at it, does it have a, is it a good story? Is it well written? Is it appropriate to the theme? And yet, this time I'm starting to also look at, does it go beyond the expected? Because a lot of stories are beautifully written, but they wrote the expected. It's like the same cast of characters. Um, and then there are people who you go, oh my God, they're looking at it from this completely different perspective with characters I never expected to see on stage. And that I that is really making a difference this time. We're getting some extraordinary stories that step outside the usual.
And Karen, what's one thing like that you wish people who are sending you stories knew before? What do you like what
To
you're
start
looking
their story on page one instead of page three.
for?
Background, 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 background. No, I want to go right there and say, he thought if this happened one more time, it would kill his mother. And there's the story. And we can find out later what legislation went through the government that's pissing him off.
Yeah, I have a fun theory that I usually can get away with when I'm buying stories. I buy them not just because of what they say, how they're written, etc. I buy them because I can see the potential for that story. That story can be great. It just needs a little bit of guidance and tweaking and maybe an application of, I know I showed it earlier, the 10% solution. One of the greatest editing books ever written. And if you ever want to talk to somebody about self editing, talk to Patrick Swinson because he published that. Uh, but it's and so we've had a lot of success in that. That means sometimes you'll find that BQ Press has a heavy-handed editing, but we believe that it it works when you can help the writer find their voice in the story. And as what Karen said is one of the truisms of it. Sending that comment that says, "Hey, if you started this story on page 5, it would be a lot better story," or you kept writing for 3 pages after the end of your story, end it on page 7. And those two little pieces of advice will help a lot of writers, because in the course of this anthology we have got 9 stories that I did that with. I sent it back to the writers and said, I really, really, really want your best work. And instead of me going in and trying to edit it, here's what I think you should consider, and then resubmit it. and that I've hardly ever been sorry. I don't always use what gets resubmitted, but it gives me a chance to buy a story that otherwise I'd be forced to reject. And I
That's quite a gift to give to writers. That's that you bother to do that at all is a real gift.
I'm not as
And there's
generous
nothing that
as
good editor is just so, I mean, I've had people occasionally, don't not you, tell me, the story like ended 2 pages ago.
I want to
And
say one other thing about endings. A lot of stories I thought were strong and vivid and compelling, where I was really engaged in the protagonist's struggle, kind of wimped out at the end. And there are a lot of different ways to, and I, as a writer, I have trouble with endings. So I see it in other people as well, and I realize it's difficult. And some of the things I would suggest is, does the ending reflect how much things have changed since your first paragraph? Does it resonate with some image or some statement from there?
yeah,
Um, or another one is, does it actually have a physical image? Do we see the protagonist at the end of the story, or are we just being told he felt so much better now? Which is very different than saying he raised his glass in triumph. So
yeah,
I,
that's the essence of short fiction. It is the story of change. And if you can't put your finger on what changed in this character's world, you may need to do some editing.
and one of the interesting things that we're getting some beautifully written stories that are similar, and because of that, people are telling this arc that goes like this, and the story, in many cases, the story would work if they had twisted it a little bit at the end. Otherwise, they're if you are telling a story that the reader can already imagine when they read the first page, oh yeah, this is going to end badly, they're not really motivated to read it unless they have the expectation that they're going to see a common scenario, and yet they're going to learn something. Someone they didn't think was going to triumph does. Uh, so yeah, I think when you have such a rich bunch of stories as we've got this time, we raise the bar and we're looking for the unusual perspective or the twist.
Well, that's exciting.
that's wonderful. So we have enjoyed talking to you about this so much. And really, your press, I think, does a great service. And it's amazing how many great anthologies you have kept
I
producing.
throw
And
one more
It
thing in
is.
for you.
sure.
Karen wasn't exactly truthful with you, said that this was her first crack at an editor gig with us. She helped us, she was one of the co-editors of Post Row Alternatives,
Oh,
which was a collection of stories we wrote after the Supreme Court gutted Roe v. Wade. And we pulled together a team of people. This was put together fairly quick, and it has some solid stories that talk about the consequences of ending the rights of women. And so, just saying,
Karen,
Karen's
oh,
been along this trip for the ride.
And we would
Karen,
be
would you hold that up while you're speaking so it shows? Because otherwise it
Yes,
may not show.
we would be remiss also if we did not mention another writer that Bob has managed to get a lot of great stories out of, which is Adam Troy Castro. And the story that he has in here is earth-shattering. It's amazing.
Awesome.
that's great. I wish you'd stop getting so much inspiration from reality, though.
Oh, really?
So
Well,
we
we wrote.
always,
Oh, I was just
So
gonna say
listen,
when we wrote the first book, we did not realize that it was prophetic.
yes. So we always end our shows with the best thing we learned this week because partially it you can get overwhelmed just like you use comedy in your anthologies. You can just get overwhelmed with how not good things are. So we look for the good. So I usually start. I hope this doesn't offend anyone. But so the favorite thing I learned this week is there's a spider. I think it's called the mandibar spider, but I could be wrong about that. And spiders have pedipalps, which are basically penises. This one has two, which isn't that uncommon for a spider. But when he mates with a female with his one of his pedipalps, he will break it off inside her so that it acts as a plug so that another spider can't get in there. But and then he will try and go away. But if another male happens to come after he's mated, they duel. And before the duel, the spider who now has only one pedipalp will bite off its second appendage, its second penis or pedipalp. And they were saying, why does he do this? And it's because actually, without those appendages, you tend to be a better fighter. But
Hmm, food
that
for
was
thought.
my.
Food for thought.
Oh God, this would be perfect for the book.
Which
So
one?
many probably. So after Elizabeth, I always follow her. And unfortunately, I always follow her because she's always so interesting. Mine was that I was reading, and this has actually been going on for a while, but that the northern fur seals, who were basically 200,000 of them were killed in 1834 in the Farallon Islands. And apparently, I guess their pelts were shipped off to China. They disappeared for 170 years from that area, but they started coming back in the 1970s. And now they're considered, there's like thousands of them there every year now, the babies, and they're reclaiming the island. So that I thought was really cool and really good news, especially being from the Bay Area originally. I was like, yeah, go Fairlawns. So now it is your turn, Karen or Bob, whoever wants to start, um, with your fun fact or happy fact or good news or fact.
I'll
Or
go.
yay, Karen.
Okay.
So I'm an only child and I'm a writer and I spend a lot of time by myself. Um, and what I've really learned this week is that working with a group of smart, big-hearted people really gets you a far better experience than trying to do it by yourself. And this is a
That's
lesson
awesome.
I have to keep learning. And I learned it from my colleagues at B Cube Press, who are amazing. Arguing with them over stories this week has been one of the best experiences of my life, and I have to keep reminding myself that a good group of people will win in the end.
Wow.
Great.
I
Bob.
missed all the arguments. Uh, but no, I tell you that it will go back to working on this project. When you have when right now we're sitting on a pile of stories that I know that 1 in 10 is going to make the book. And these are stories that most of them have made it past the first two cuts. I've actually started I've had something similar, but I've started what I call the best reject file, where I am plowing stories into it that I know I will probably buy for two or three anthologies we've got set up. So I already have the file set up. And just being able, it is depressing to reject all day, to everything being a rejection. It feels so final. And to be able to know that when I send that, I can say, I very much loved your story. It was well written and everything. And then instead of closing with, and I'm sorry I have to reject it, I'll be able to close with, now, if you're interested, I have this other anthology that I would like to submit it into for consideration. And just the quality of the work that's coming in that has lifted the stress of this project immensely by not forcing me to reject all of the great work that's being put in. Uh,
That's
And I'm
super
going to
nice.
throw out again another gift to writers from you, Bob. Really,
Yeah.
how lovely. So,
So thank you so much for talking to us again. We look forward, of course, to the new books. I've got a chance to read Southern Truce, and it's wonderful, as always, just filled with gems. Will bless their hearts.
and we want to thank Maria Korolov and Alex Korolov for all their work helping to put this show together. And at MetaStellar, you can see Elizabeth's Gods and Monsters. It is about to finish. It's been what, not anthologized, but what's the word?
Serialized for
Serialized.
like
See, I'm
10 months.
losing words today. Serialized throughout the year, and it will have its final episode, which she also reads, or you can read, right at the first of the year. And then the novel itself will be available for purchase. And really, it's an amazing book. I highly suggest everyone go out and read it online or buy a copy. And in MetaStellar itself, we publish original fiction that is science fiction, horror, and fantasy. And we also do reprints. And you can look us up online and find out all about us. And if you want to be a Patreon, you can go to Patreon and help support us so that we can continue to publish original fiction because we do pay the authors. And I think that's it. Have we covered everything, Elizabeth?
I think you have
So,
covered everything. I want to add one little thing is yes, Gods and Monsters will finish basically the first of next year, and more or less the first week. And it's available for pre-order on the 21st of January and for purchase itself on the 31st. So yes, and you can
okay.
also listen on Spotify if you want to.
Yes. So
So
again,
you.
thank you, Bob and Karen, so much for joining us today. It's been
Thank you
lovely.
for having us. This is great.
Good,
Yes,
good.
thank you.
Thank you. And we will just thank our audience and we'll see you all next time. So
Bye.
bye.